That's right, live on Chicano Tube. And we're back live on Chicano Street with this special Thanksgiving. It's a Tuesday night Thanksgiving week edition of La Platica. I want to give a shout out to everyone, all the day oneers, every one of the members only, all the Chicano channels and all the Chicano pages. And of course, an introduction over here to me, Chicano Hermano Waywardson 360. Mi hermano, how are you?
Doing good. How you doing, bro?
No, good, good, good. I appreciate you having you on. Every time you come on, it's like the conversation just picks up where it left off. And of
Yeah,
course,
man.
I follow you, and so I want to ask you about some of the things that you've also been talking about. But I appreciate your knowledge, and I appreciate you again.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
That's right, hermano. And so everyone that's in the chat, we'll try to get to all the questions that you have. A lot of indigenous questions, a lot of history, a lot of cultura, a lot of chicanismo. We'll try to get to as many as we can. Hermano, what I wanted to do on this one is we're taking it back. We're talking about the roots. We're talking about the cultura. This is primarily what my demographic of raza, that subscribers listening to. And if you didn't know Waywardson, with mi hermano right here, it's an interesting story. You know, he's a blue collar worker, trabaja bien duro. You'll catch him on his lives con drywall, los dedos de drywall, working hard inside. And your story is interesting, carnal, that you dropped, some content on TikTok, which was some truth. And then you go back to work and you come back to your phone and you're like, whoa, the thing just probably almost died from all the vibrating bzz, 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 bzz. And I haven't heard you say one mistruth yet. And so is that how you kind of came on the scene?
Yeah, it's I was actually at work when all of this started. I didn't plan on making content. That wasn't my intention. I just came on to like watch videos and but one of the things that rubs me the wrong way is when people are coming for our people, and
Mm.
I will always stand in defense of our people. And what really bothers me is some of the so-called Mexican Americans on this side when they go against Mexicanos, from Mexico. And I used to
Mm.
be the same way, especially growing up Chicano, because I knew that I grew up with the pleito. We weren't just having palabras, we were throwing chingazos. We was out there getting it in the streets. And I used to be the same, type of dude that I see nowadays, these youngsters who don't know the history, don't know the connection between our people and them. They don't know that it's one line, because
Mm.
we're growing up in a different onda, so we think that we're different, but we're of the same blood. So I used to attack them also, and it used to go back and forth. So when I see now that I have a better understanding, because I used to be that dude, but now that I have a better understanding of who my people are and where my ties lie, where my roots actually come from, I try to move away from that. And when I see it, I call it out.
Oh yeah. Again, I haven't heard you say untruth to this day, and a lot of people call it controversial, but we'll get to it. We'll get to it right now. This is a week right now where I'm sure tú ya conoces el ambiente, what's going on. It's Thanksgiving Thursday. The traditional, they say in Spanish, acción de gracias, give thanks. Put an action verb in there, right? And so that's in the air right now. And I follow a lot of indigenous pages, hermano. I follow a lot of cultura indigenous pages, and there's one, what is it called? The one given set of media, and then there's something else to counter it. And a lot of people are calling it Thankskilling, because a lot of people are saying, no, the story is not that the Europeans came, they met at the shore, sat down, made some stuffing, and called it a day. Some people say that's the opposite of what happened. To your understanding, what is that? What happened? What's the traditional U.S. sense Thanksgiving, or did something that no wonder they left it out of the history books so bad they couldn't talk about it happened?
Well, originally Thanksgiving wasn't a feast. When it first started off, it was a fasting, but it eventually, turned into a feast, a celebration. And one of the main
Mm,
celebrations and what pushed it into the mainstream was the fact that they were celebrating the slaughter of over 700, per quote, Native Americans. They were celebrating that slaughter. They were celebrating that massacre. So no, it's not what everybody believes it to be. And what gets me is a lot of people, even when they know that history, they're like, they they kind of like move around that in order to continue doing what they're doing. Like, hey, I understand what happened, but I'm just giving things for, I've got a good job, I'm in good health, I'm this. You kind of justify what it is that you're doing. And I understand that to a point, because I used to do the same thing. When I found out the true history of Thanksgiving and what actually took place, I'm like, okay, well, I understand that, but I'm not celebrating that. I'm just giving thanks that, everybody, we always gathered ever since I was a
right,
child.
right. Bow your
And
head, give thanks.
right. And because matter of fact, and I don't know if you do this in your home, and when we have Thanksgiving, we all go around the table and everybody says something that they're thankful for. And you'll stand up and you'll say what you're thankful for, and the next person will go. So we kind of like overlooked all the actual history of what happened.
Mm.
And okay, well, that was in the past. We're just doing this in this way in the future, but at the same in the present, but at the same time, you can't forget why you're at that table on that particular day.
So again, this in a lot of history in the US is, I don't know if you would agree with me, it's very selective of what they put in the history books, but a lot of people are saying, you had said in one short, in one video, Christopher Columbus's voyages I believe were actually mataderas, massacres. Is that true?
Not only is that true, and a lot of people won't talk about it, Christopher Columbus was also involved in the sex trade. A lot of the women that he sent back were sent into sexual slavery, and nobody talks about that. They don't talk about the vast majority of those were girls, were young girls. If you, and all you have to do is actually look at the actual context in which it took place. You know, in during slavery, let's put for instance African American slavery. When you bought an African American slave, you bought the biggest, the strongest, healthiest, because they were doing actual manual labor. But at the time of Christopher Columbus, you know, little girls actually sold for more than grown men. Little girls actually sold for more than grown women. Little girls sold for more than boys. It's just that's what it was. They knew what they were doing. They knew, you know, what was taking place, and he was selling them into sexual slavery. He would send back these little girls to Spain and to other countries out there to, you know, as sexual slaves. So no, it's not a day to celebrate.
Is it what do you think was el ambiente? What was the atmosphere? We know that sooner or later systems of titles and deeds and were established. European systems brought here, and then they started taking the land. I know a lot of the gente that were already here were like they couldn't fathom the concept of how are you going to own the land? How are you going to own the dirt? How are you going to own the sky, the clouds? That was a foreign concept. What was the ambiente then? Was there a revolt? Half of people revolting and half of the people assimilating?
Well, it is to this day, but there are so many people because see, a lot of people talk about the conquest. They talk when you talk about Spain and you talk about what took on what actually happened with Hernan Cortez and the allies, the indigenous allies that they had, the Tlaxcalans against the Mexica, but that's not actually how it happened. Most people don't talk about the fact that they actually clashed before the Tlaxcalans in the in Hernan Cortez's army. They clashed before they went to the Mexica. They actually fought, but they lost. They lost, and I guess they figured, hey, if you can't beat them, join them. So, matter of fact, yeah, I do hate the Mexica. I do hate the Aztecs too. So I'm going to join the people that just defeated me and go against them. It wasn't like they saw this, they came over and said, hey, those people are oppressing you. Let's get together and go against them. It wasn't like that. They actually fought the Spaniard at the beginning.
Oh, man. So yeah, el ambiente, they come over here and it was written that, in all this literature, European literature was written that they found the people to be savages, barbarians. Do you think that was just a narrative?
No, it's a narrative that's been so, and you know what really gets me is we got so many of our own people that follow that narrative because it's what they've been taught, it's what they believe. They look, and I've said this so many times. You need to be careful where you get your information because there are 504 codices that refer to the Mexica or those who we call the Aztecs. 504 of them. 500 out of those 504 were written after the conquest. They came here and they destroyed our history. They burned our history, and then they rewrote it in order, as they say, to preserve it. But most of that is lies. They lied in the codices that they were written, so everybody's relying on those codices for the truth. If you go to the Codices Florentine, if you go to the Codex Florentine, you will see the lies outright because what they didn't know is they were interpreting our history and they wrote it in Spanish. All the codices you'll have it written in Spanish and in Nahuatl, the indigenous language. But in the Codex Florentine, they wrote what the Spaniard told them to write. But because the Spaniard did not understand the indigenous language, in the indigenous language, they wrote the complete opposite. They told the truth on the Nahuatl side, on the indigenous side. So the Spaniard, the Franciscan friars were only able to read the Spanish side, and they said, okay, well, they said exactly what we told them to say, but on the other side was the truth. And if you learn that language and you go in there and you read it, you'll see that they're not the same. There are two different versions of that history.
So what you're saying right now, pues, would you say this? Would you say because they try to destroy all the history, that's something you don't want to we shouldn't forget. That's what you're saying, right?
Absolutely, because they relied on us to such a high degree. They called us savages in order to justify their own savagery against us. They had to do that. They do it. They did it then. They do it to this day. They look at people across the water and they call them terrorists. They call them insurgents. They use derogatory terms to identify somebody in order to justify the atrocities they're going to commit against those people. They did the same thing with us. If you read the codices, you'll see that in the codices it says in one of the codices, it says that they sacrificed over 40,000 people over what was it? It was more than 40,000. It was in 4 days they sacrificed 80,000 people. If you was to actually do the math, you'll see it's impossible. There's no way that they did this. There's no way that that could happen. They would, if you break it down and you do the math, they would have actually had to sacrifice one person every 5 seconds, 24 hours a day for 4 days straight. It's just not, their math ain't mathing. But they use this to justify it. And you got so many of our own people regurgitating the truth that they told them. They've told you so many times before, you know this to be true, that the history is written by the victor. Well, we're reading their history, their version of our history, and it's just not true.
Mm.
They also said that they discovered under the Templo Mayor over 300,000 skulls. No, they didn't. After excavation, all the way to this point, you know how many skulls have actually been? It says it in the codices. They counted them. I think it's like 360,000 skulls that were there in order to justify our, what they did to us and calling us savages. You know how many have actually been found since the conquest to this day? 260. 260 skulls from 360,000. They
Okay.
lie.
So some embellishing going on in the history. It's the history that's been fed. And but I mean, I get it, man. It's such a huge black eye. Why would you really want to tell the true history? Because you got people in conversations today talking about reparations. Que se debe porque quitaron. Let me ask you that. It's a popular topic. Do you believe any group segment, whether son indigenous, raza, son africanos, do you believe any group segment should have some kind of reparation paid to them?
Well, being Mexicano,
Or land
I'm
also, or land or some kind of deal.
I'm gonna give you an example, and I said this in my live the other day. I work construction, so I go to Home
Sí.
Depot quite a bit. And on the way to Home Depot, I pass Home Depot's just down the street. I pass about four different corners, and on each corner, somebody's standing there asking for money, holding up a sign, preguntando, hey, I'm hungry or this, that, or the other, holding up signs asking for money. Not one of them is a Mexicano. You know where those Mexicanos are? They're at Home Depot. They're over there looking for an opportunity. They're not looking for a handout. They're over there trying to get work. And that's what I say. We're not looking. Me personally, I'm not looking for reparations because I'm gonna get mine regardless. I'm gonna make ends meet regardless. I'm gonna get mine.
Mm.
I don't need you to hold, to hold out a loaf of bread or to give me some money so I can go get it. I'm gonna get it myself. But the thing is that there are points that need to be, things that need to be done. And a lot of that has to do with land back for Native Americans, sovereignty, and honoring, because they didn't honor the treaties that they had with our people to begin with after the Mexican American War. They stole a lot of land. I did a video, and I don't know if you've seen it, on the King Ranch, and the King Ranch
Mm.
Ford Edition. And the King Ranch is the biggest ranch in the United States and one of the biggest ranches in the world. This ranch is made up of primarily stolen land that was stolen from Mexicans after the Mexican American War because the United States did not honor that treaty. They just outright stole that land. And so, what I would ask for is to honor the treaties, all treaties with Native Americans and with our people, too.
But some people are gonna say, well, in society nowadays, 2024, with all these political red tape and all these systems. I actually had the Brown Berets. The Brown Berets were on here, and a sister. Her name is Tina Marie from the Brown Berets. Shout out to her. She said that she holds it in her heart that they should give the land back to the indigenous tribes. And then she said, as far as immigration goes, the indigenous people should be the gatekeepers on who comes in to out. Do you think would you have the same opinion on say that it go back like that? And then do you think that's feasible? Do you think that'll work?
I don't think it will, because I don't think, the thing is, it's the same thing with Mexico and their sovereignty. They didn't get it peacefully. They had to fight a war. In most cases, there's a war that has to take place. Same thing with the French in Haiti. The French in what's now called Haiti. That's just, it comes to a point where people get tired being oppressed and they fight back. They start marching, they start getting together, they start making other people aware of the true history of what happened, because hundreds of years had passed in each case. Mexico was colonized for 300 years. Haiti was colonized for 300 years. The United States has only been colonized for 248 years. There's still a time difference there, and it's over a period of time. But over that period of time, people become accustomed to their subjugation. And the way I always phrase it is the same thing as an obedient dog. When you pick up the leash, the obedient dog doesn't bark in defiance. He wags his
Mm.
tail. He's happy for you to put that leash on him and walk him down that road. And that's what happens to people. That's especially our people. They're like, well, you know what? I don't care about all that. I've got a good job. I've got a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath house, and I'm doing okay. So forget about all that. I don't want anything to do with that. I don't want any part of that. I'm going to continue to do what I'm doing. You need to quit crying, quit being a victim, and get out there and make it your own. What you're asking me to do is accept my subjugation. Accept the fact that we are considered a lower class people in our own lands, because these are indigenous lands, regardless of whether or not you want to call it Mexico, United States.
Mm.
Those are just labels placed on the land. We didn't have that label. We had one label. We called our area Anahuac, and the indigenous people up north called it Turtle Island. So me, when I look at what's now called Mexico, I call that the southern region of Turtle Island, because it was all one people, and there was trade, and they always try to instill that we were all fighting each other before this happened, and to justify what they did afterwards. Hey, we all fighting each other before we even got here, to try to justify what they did after they got here.
You say things like that, hermano. You know what people say. You read the comments. I've seen you react to the comments on TikTok as well. People tell you this. I just want to ask you: does this get under your skin when people tell you it sounds like you have some kind of anti-American sentiment or undertone in your message? What do you think when 1,000 comments or 10,000 in your videos come in like that? I know you kind of address them all, but and it's a two-part question. Like in the movie Mi Familia, one of the great uncle, he passed away, and on his headstone he said, "I was born here when it was Mexico, and as I'm laying here, this is still Mexico." Should Chicanos or Mexicanos have that same kind of sentiment, o sea, that this land is still Mexico? Should we not acknowledge the territory that was taken?
No, and see, that's one of the things, and I have quite a few differences with some of our own brothers about this. And because as well as I do, the phrase, we didn't cross the border crossed us.
Mm,
And so that's only going back to when this was called Mexico. But what was it called before that? We're looking at things that happened after colonization. And as Chicanos in the Chicano movement, it wasn't about Mexico. It wasn't about Spanish. It was disconnecting yourself from the what we were experiencing here in the United States, and reconnecting to our roots. But most Chicanos, in searching out those roots, realized that Spanish and Mexico wasn't our roots. That was the point of our uprooting. We go further back than that. This is what we go back to. This is what they push on you. This is what this is what's hidden behind here. And we're always leaving this behind. We're always gravitating towards, okay, well, Mexico, if you look at Mexico before the Mexican American War, you will see that Mexico is the exact same thing that they once called New Spain. Why is that? Why are the boundaries of what was Mexico before the Spanish American War the exact same boundaries set forth by the Spaniard? Because those are the exact same lands that were colonized by the Spaniard. And after independence from Spain and from the Spaniard, instead of giving, like we're asking the United States to give back the land to the indigenous people, we chose not to do that as well. We did the exact same thing the Spaniard did. We picked up where the Spaniard left off. We claimed those lands in the name of Mexico instead of returning them back to the indigenous people of them, which we are. Those lands should have been splitted back up, and we should have had our lands too. but we didn't.
Mm.
It's now, and I say this so many times now, and a lot of people don't understand this. Colonization doesn't no longer flies under the banner of colonization. It flies under the banner of nationalism. Nationalism and colonization are the exact same thing. The United States wants the Native Americans to give up their tribal sovereignty, give up their tribes, no longer be Comanche, no longer be Hopi, Shoshone, be American. Mexico is asking you the same thing, no longer to be Otomi, Purupecha, Tarahumara, to be Mexican. And they do this to consolidate that power over the people because
Mm.
they're not giving the land back to the people. They're claiming it in the name of a country.
Hermano, somebody asked in the comments section, SenCal86, I see you, and I appreciate all you guys. I'm going to try to get to some of your questions. They ask you, are you Native American? Are
I
you?
am both Nawa, I am both Nawa and Winsa, which most people call Zapotec, but Zapotec is a Nawa word. Our people is called Winsa, and I'm both Winsa and Nawa.
Okay, got it. Is that in the northern region of Mexico,
Southern,
allá por Texas, or?
por Zapotec, por Oaxaca.
Oh, that's down south. Okay, that's
Yes,
down there.
that's where
Okay,
my
okay.
that's where my people originate. That's where my my bloodlines go back to, my roots.
Oh, okay, got it. And that's on both sides, mom and dad.
No, my mom's side is Nawa, and that comes from the region. It's up right above Mexico City, a pueblo right above Mexico City. But my father's side goes back down to Mexico. And I
Okay.
don't know if I've told you this or not, and I can show you the paperwork. And if I haven't said this before, and there's a reason why I don't say this, why I don't speak about it much, but since we got a good rapport, we talk a lot about a lot of
Yeah.
things. My father's side, and I know you'll know the name. My great 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 grandfather. Do you know who he is? Have you heard me talk about it before? Have you been in any of my lives where I showed you the paper? Where I showed the paperwork?
No, it goes over my head.
Okay, my great 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 grandfather is Benito Juarez. Now
Hello.
this is the first time that I've ever mentioned this on your channel. This is the first time I've ever mentioned it in any other interview. I have mentioned it before because I did show my family tree. I showed my family tree one time, well, a few times on my live. But the reason that I don't speak about it much is because knowing this, I know history and I know what Benito Juarez did to the indigenous people. And a lot of people look at that as, oh, well, he's damn, your great 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 grandfather is Benito Juarez. Man, that's cool. That's this, that, and the other. Because he celebrated there in Mexico. When I fly to Mexico, I fly into Benito Juarez Airport. There's Juarez, Mexico. Matter of fact, Oaxaca, where my people come from, is Oaxaca de Juarez.
Wow.
His birthday is the only birthday celebrated, or the only presidential birthday celebrated in Mexico. But here's the thing, and this is one of the reasons why I don't speak on it much, is because I stand for the indigenous people. And I know what he
Mm.
did against the indigenous people. And a lot of people don't know that history, so they celebrate his name. But here's the thing, Benito Juarez, he did one thing that I appreciate, that I like that he did, and that is he took away the power of the church in government, the Catholic Church. He broke that power that they had over the governmental system.
Mm.
But in doing that, in doing that, it was called the Hino program, where the Catholic Church actually had possession of the indigenous lands because they were oversaw, just like the United States does to the Native Americans. They oversaw the indigenous lands of the people. And so when he took away the power of the church, he took away the lands of the indigenous people. And instead of returning those lands back to the indigenous people, he kept them in the name of Mexico. That's one of the things that I don't agree with what he did. And that's my own, that's a relative of mine. So that's why I don't speak on it that much, because there's things that I know that I don't approve of what he did back when he was president. Another thing that he did is he made a treaty with the United States, and he did this in order to maintain power, to have the United States back him to maintain power. And in doing that, he would have made Mexico a puppet, a relative puppet to the United States of America. The United States would have had control over certain aspects of government in Mexico. And the only reason that that treaty didn't pass is because the United States Congress shot it down, not Mexico and not him. He did this in order to maintain power. So it's not something like a lot of people look at it. Oh, why are you trying to get secondhand clout? That's why I've never, I don't really speak on it, because the people that follow me because of what I talk about, my own words, not because,
Right.
I'm related to somebody else. That's why I don't speak on it that much.
Hermano, I'm blown away, right? And I think I'm gonna have a 1942 Don Julio trago for your great, 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 great grandfather Benito Juarez. Correct me if I'm wrong. In the history of presidents of Mexico, uh, there hasn't been too many that have como piel morena, o sea, they have people of color. Your great, 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 great grandfather was one of the first presidents that people were actually talking about. He had color.
He was the only, he still is the only 100% indigenous president of Mexico. In all of Mexico, he is the one and only 100% indigenous president of Mexico.
My. Wow. I missed that video. Um, and I'm gonna go back to one other question because I know we talked about the second part of it. I think I threw two-part question at you. You get a lot of comments saying anti-American sentiment. You know, this is Chicano Street. This is Chicano Tube. I know que soy Chicano. I just if you have to question it, you probably aren't it, right?
Yeah.
I also know that I'm Mexicano because, like you said, we just know our roots. I've spent most of my childhood in Mexico throughout the summer. I think me and you, both of us, are dual citizens de dos diferentes países, right? Respectfully. And as far as the American, again, these are all labels, I believe. Pues I went to school with kids with blonde hair and blue eyed. Half of them Debbie's, half of them Roxanne's or Eric's or whatever their name was. Um, do you get irritated when people tell you they have an anti-American sentiment? And what do you identify as?
And well, I identify as my people. And but see, there's a lot of people that don't, because when you ask a Native American, who are you? What are you? I'm Apache. I'm Comanche. I'm Shoshone. Those that know. Unfortunately, for many of us, there are so many of us that don't know. You ask a Chicano, you ask anybody else, what are you? I'm Mexican. No,
Hmm.
but what are you? Who are your people? Well, I'm Hispanic. No, 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 that's not an ethnicity. What's your ethnicity? I'm Latino. Because they don't know, because that was taken from us. And you have to have that empathy when you talk to people like that. There's a reason why they don't know. And that's the result of colonization. So as for me personally, they say that you're an American, and what I try to get people to understand is this, and I'm gonna put it in these terms. I've said this so many times before. If China was to invade this country tomorrow and rename it New China, would that make you Chinese?
Come on.
That's all I'm saying. This country, the United States, right now, where I'm from, Texas, it used to be called New Spain. That did not make the Comanche Spaniards. It used to be called Mexico. That did not make the Apache Mexicans. It used to be called the Republic of Texas. It doesn't make you, it makes you a citizen of that country. I'm a citizen of the United States of America. I'm not American. There's a difference. And when people ask me, well, what's the difference? What's the difference? Here's the difference. This country wasn't made for me and you, or people that look like me and you. Mexicans were made citizens of the United States in 1848. Native Americans were made citizens of the United States in 1924. African Americans were made citizens of the United States in 1868. You notice that none of those days say 1776?
No, they came after.
After. Because this country wasn't made for people like you and me. It wasn't made for citizens like us. Matter of fact, the first immigration policy that the United States of America had, you can look this up, and I showed it in one of my videos. The immigration policy required that you be a white person of good character in order to be a citizen of the United States, either born or naturalized. Only white people could be citizens of the United States, plain and simple. This country wasn't made for you and me. And so when they ask me, are you an American? No, I'm not an American. I'm a citizen of the United States of America. I'm a subject of this country, this colonizer's, government. I'm a subject to them. And just like, they speak about our people, well, your people were subjugating people back over here too, and they were paying tribute. We pay tribute just as the same way. The same way that they talk about that the Aztecs had other people paying tribute to them, we pay tribute to the United States in the form of taxes. We're doing the exact same thing, and they are doing the exact same thing. So no, I'm not a I'm a citizen of the United States of America. I'm not an American. I know the difference.
Okay, because it's funny. You just made me think of a song that we sang, in elementary school. My country, 'tis of thee, and it says, "This land was made for you and me." These are these are the kind of videos you do on TikTok. They get a lot of views because a lot of people express the same sentiment that you say. But what do you say when someone says America is an idea, and over all these centuries of evolution, progress, whatever they call it, it came to be a melting pot of immigrants? Does that hold okay with you, or you have a problem with that statement?
The funny thing is, they call it a melting pot, but why are we the only ones required to melt? Why didn't they
Okay,
melt?
gotcha.
Why didn't they melt? Why aren't they speaking an indigenous language? Why aren't they speaking Spanish? Why are we following their culture, their programs, their way of living, their way of governmental life, their English? Why are we following them? That's the thing. They call it a melting pot, but we're the only ones required to melt.
Que gacho. I mean, that's like shit. Rebut that, huh? Hermano, I want to ask you something that I ended up. I don't know if you know another hermano. His name is Kiawi. Shout out to Kiawi, mi hermano. He says he follows you also as well, and he's on YouTube. I believe he's on TikTok as well. I had a conversation with him, and I asked him, and I want to ask you the same question. This made a lot of people laugh, and it was like, I don't know what, but it just came to my head. Do you believe it's possible, hermano, that there can be a 100% indigenous Barbie, but she looks like Barbie, white, fair skin, and colored eyes, but be 100% indígena?
No, there was lighter complected and darker complected people
No
before.
chance at all?
No, I don't. I think well, when you
Not
go up,
1%.
when you go up like towards the Métis and the up towards Canada and stuff like that, they are lighter complected. Some of them are very light complected, but as far as being 100% indigenous and being blonde haired, blue eyed, I can't see it. All of those things I think are like the results of colonization. That's just like with me, the lightness. And I say this even because people are like, why are you hating on yourself? What's all the self hatred? No, I'm just recognizing things for what they are. The color of my eyes and the lightness of my skin bear witness to the subjugation of my people. I see colonization every time I look in the mirror, and it's not because I hate on myself or because I'm overthinking things. It's just that I'm seeing the reality of it. Because see, and I've explained this to so many people before. My journey started with a whisper. It started with the whisper, but that voice grows louder and louder every day. The voice of our ancestors are calling out to us. It's time. It's time. And to ignore that call, look all around you. I'm sure you saw the video of the haka of the people in New Zealand,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Okay, it's going on all around. It isn't just us. It isn't just Native Americans here in the United States or those down in Mexico. It's everywhere, everywhere. The beat of the war drum grows louder by the day across the world for all indigenous people. And people are starting to finally answer that call.
Hermano, someone asked me one time, and they said, Mikey, if you had to go to arms right now, and you reside in the United States, and it was Mexico versus the United States, no ifs, ands, or buts, you're lacing up your boots. Which country are you going to war for? I'm going to ask you the same question, or you could plead the Fifth Amendment. But if you had to lace your boots up, there's another 2-year Mexican American war for territory or whatever. Which flag are you flying?
Win, lose, or die with Mexico, with my people. See, that's the whole thing that I preach to people. This is more than about. This isn't about a country. This
Mm.
isn't about the United States. It isn't about Mexico. It's about your roots, your people. Who are you? We sit here and we divide each other by the white man's concept. They came here. They drew on a piece of paper and said, "This is the map of this region. I'm going to put this line here. That belongs to you, and this belongs to me."
Mm.
I've got a deed. They made papers and they said, "You know what? I'm going to circle this. This is my plot of land. I'm going to put my words right here. And this is now that land belongs to me." They claimed all these things. We didn't have boundaries. We didn't have, and I said this, I don't know if I said this in one of your lives, one of your
Mm.
podcasts before. There was trade between our people. There was interaction between our people. I know they dwell on the conflicts and things that were going on of that nature, that the history that they teach you in the American history books. But there was trade between our people. And I've said this so many times before. The three sisters, beans, squash, and corn.
Mm.
Corn comes from down south. Beans come from the area of Peru. Now they had squash up here, but the majority of squashes are grown down south. But yet you have northern natives that honor these three sisters, pay tribute to these three sisters. And but that came from down south. There was interactions. You could actually look up a map and you can see the trade routes between northern nations and southern nations. There are maps that show trade routes of what they use. You can find some of the things that you find only down there in what used to be called, Anahuac. You find them up here, as well as things from up here that's down there. There was a lot of trade that went on. And it's not something that we can just ignore. We had that type of interaction.
Mm.
So when I look at these lands, I don't see your land and my land. I see our land as far as the indigenous people, of them are concerned.
My country, tis of thee, hermano. Let me ask you this, hermano. What map? You were just talking about maps right now. What map is the most accurate map then? From what century? From 19th century, 18th, 17th, 16th? Which one, in your opinion, what's the true map?
And see, that's hard. That's hard to actually answer, and the reason is because all those maps were drawn by white people. They weren't drawn by us. They were drawn by white people. All of those maps.
Cartographers or something, les llaman.
Yeah, and it's there. It was to outline what they looked to claim. Our people simply called the land what they called it and existed in it, as they existed, but they drew out those maps in order to lay claim to this, not just to explore, not just to look, but so okay, well, there's this region here, this is mine, that region's yours. You see the maps of the United States before, when it was just 13 colonies here, and you see the French, and you see Spain, and you see the United States. They all laid claim to this land, and they needed to outline those borders to show which one was theirs, which one was mine, which one belonged to France. They were dividing it up. So those maps and stuff like that, I don't know if we can look at them in those terms, because they're accurate as far as the borders, but they're not accurate as far as who the land belonged to.
But you would say, would it be a pre-colonial map? Would it be a
It would have to,
post-colonial?
because you can go into some of these maps and you can see, um, for instance, the 1847 Disternal map. You look at the 1847 Disternal map, which is part of the treaty, is the map, the official map of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. And
Mm,
you look into that map, and you will see up in the southwest region, it says Concepcion. Um, um, it says Concepcion right there in the southwest region. Antigua Residencia de los Aztecas. That's in the Library of Congress, in the United States Library of Congress. That map, the 1847 Disternal map, actually says Concepcion, Antigua Residencia de los Aztecas on their map, in their Library of Congress in the United States. And if you actually follow that map, because you can go deeper
mm.
into it, because there's maps from the 1700s. There's one for the 1600s that shows our people on these lands. It shows, and even in the 1847 Disternal map, when you go down, and you'll see second house of the Aztecs,
Mm.
because you can actually see the migration of our people coming down. Then third house of the Aztecs, it's actually there. But a lot of people don't know about it because they don't actually put in the work and do the research. But there's a few maps that has our people as starting
Yeah,
from up here.
absolutely, absolutely. I wanted to get your thoughts on Mexico, which I just got back from. I just got back from the motherland. The tastiest food. Oh my gosh. Jeez, Louise. I think I did a live, one or two lives over there. Híjole. I don't want to let that go, hermano, and I want to teach that to my children. Because there's no shadow of a doubt that somos Mexicanos, the Chicano is another label, and then they could put all kinds of labels on the can. That's fine. But we know what blood pumps through us. I wanted to get your thoughts on the first female president of Mexico. People are saying that there is Jewish blood inside of her. I don't have a problem with her being female, but people are looking at her roots, that she has Jewish roots. So I just wanted to get your opinion on that. I just got back from Mexico and I seen a lot of things that I got to keep it honest with you. I've seen some left leaning things over there that I never really seen in Mexico. And I'm wondering if this has to do with the new female president, because a lot of people are calling her the new AOC.
Yeah, and see that's one of the things that's kind of a touchy subject to some people, and I can see it both ways. I mean,
Because
but
we're in the US and we're not in Mexico.
right, but at the same time, when we look at it, and everybody's celebrating the fact that it's the first woman president, because we've had the first, um, you can say African or black
Sí,
president,
sí, sí,
but he
tenemos
was
uno ya.
mixed, right? And now we have the first female, even before the United States. We abolished slavery before the United States. We had the first black president before the United States, before Obama. We had the first female president before the United States. All of these progressive things, and all that's good and well. But when push comes to shove, it's still somebody from the outside looking in and in control of of what's going on there. It's not an indigenous person, because there was an indigenous, now a woman, that was running for president at the same time, and she wasn't voted in. Why?
Mm.
She was running against Claudia, but you don't hear anything about her. She was from the pueblo, and she was a Nahuatl, but she didn't win. But a Jewish woman won, and I saw a video of somebody that follows me, and I respect his opinion, but he's saying, well, she's Mexican. She was born in Mexico. Yeah, well, George Washington was born here. That doesn't make him indigenous to these lands. He just makes second generation, third generation colonizer, and that's what I tell people. I look, I don't care if you came over on the Mayflower. It makes me no difference. That just tells me that you're 14th, 15th, 16th generation colonizer, foreigner. I don't. As long as there's one
He
single,
got you.
as long as there's one single drop of indigenous blood in these lands, to that blood, they will always be foreign. And they
Mm.
don't, I know they don't want to hear that, but that's the truth. Your blood is foreign to mine, and it will always be foreign to mine. I don't care how many generations pass. And so when you got a president like Claudia, yeah, okay, she's the first female president. We did, we showed that we can look beyond, that. But at the same time, she's not of these lands. She might have been born in Mexico, but she's not of the people. And it's the same thing with AMLO. So many people celebrated AMLO. AMLO was 80% Spaniard. Did you know that?
No, no. He's
AMLO, as much as he did for the indigenous people, AMLO was 80% Spaniard. His great grandfather and his great grandmother were both from Spain. They immigrated from Spain. Now, this isn't my words. This is him. He says this. You can look up his words and how he describes his great grandfather and great grandmother. They're from, one of them's Castilian and the other one I forget exactly where he's from, but I think his mother's Castilian, and they were from Spain. So he was 80% Spaniard. And yes, they can continue to do right by us in some of the things that they did. But at the same time, they're still not of us. And that's my problem. I simply believe that indigenous people should have control over indigenous issues on indigenous lands. It's that simple.
now. What do you say to people that say you keep bringing up skin color? I know you read the comments all the time. Is that something that we should just be thinking about, carrying in our minds? What's funny, hermano, is because you have a very interesting perspective. You know your history. First of all, you know your roots. Second of all, you know your history. Okay. Y aquí estamos en los Estados Unidos, and we're prospering in this country. Yet we're holding on to the motherland. We're holding on to the traditions, the teachings. This is like an evolution of thinking, which I think this is what great makes a great dynamic for us to have great conversations. But in 2024, constantly doing videos, and we're talking about skin color. Do you think that's an issue or it's a non-issue?
You can't help the skin that you're born in, but I can recognize it for what it is. My grandfather, and see, my grandfather was, I mean, a complete 5 shades darker than me.
Mm,
5 shades, not one or two shades. My grandfather was five. If you was to stand my grandfather to a good, next to a good 40% of African Americans, he was darker than most than 40% of them. Okay, he was that dark, and you looked at him and you seen indigenous in him,
mm,
right? His features, everything about him. And when I look at that, and I hear people talk about the differences, oh well, there was, melanated people, copper skinned people, and all these others that try to lay claim to our history. I look at that and I'm like, dude, did you not know that this is the result of colonization? When you go into Mexico and you go to the pueblos, you're going to see some dark complected people. I'm talking about,
oh yeah,
way darker than what we are. And because and you'll see if they do their
beautiful,
DNA, they have a higher percentage of indigeneity because
beautiful.
our people were, of a darker tone. This is, colonization. And now I don't say, because I don't like look down on those that are light complected. I just recognize why I'm light complected, why I am the way I am. Just like I tell people when I talk about Spanish, Catholicism, and your last name. And I'm gonna say this, and I know this is gonna bug a lot of people, but I think I've said it on your podcast before.
Mm,
If your name is Gonzalez, Martinez, Hernandez, Garcia, Lopez, all of these Spanish names, that's a slave name. You're wearing a slave name, and some of us wear it proudly. They have it on the back of their trucks. They have it on the back of their T-shirts. Hernandez, just out there, big. You're proud of a slave name. Now I know that's going to hurt some people's feelings. I understand that, and you might not agree with me, but it is what it is. Because what you have to understand is most of those names, the vast majority of those names, were given to you during the baptism when the Spaniards came over here. See, they talk about the conquest, but most people don't talk about the inquisitions that followed. They don't talk about what the Catholic Church did, the Franciscan friars. And I've said, I think I've said this before on your podcast. We talk about the Indian training schools, the indigenous boarding
mm,
schools. They didn't start in the United States. They didn't start here. They started in Mexico. The very first indigenous boarding school was in Mexico, and it was you. It was in I think it was 1527, and what it was to strip the children of the nobility, of the Aztec or the Mexican nobility, of their culture, their heritage, just what they did over here, but in a different way. They put it across as advanced training to acculturate them, to strip them of their indigenous roots and replace that with Spanish and their culture. But in doing that, they took away their indigenous name, just like they did here. And during the baptism, after the baptism, you were given or made to take a Spanish
mm.
surname. That's why your name's what it is now. That's something that was given to us. It's not something that we possessed before they got here.
No, yeah, yeah. I had a guest on, and his last name. He stated it on the live, and he said that was because great grandfather had to assimilate it and got indoctrinated when they were assimilated. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I'm looking at a lot of the comments. They're saying what you said about Hernandez, Lopez, and about those being basically foreign names, right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
is there a way to find out what is our native name?
There is actually, and a lot of people don't know this because they don't, they kind of stay in the shallow end of the pool. And first of all, and it depends on who your people were, who you were. If you have the Nahua right now, Nahua is the largest indigenous population in Mexico today.
Mm,
Nawak, the indigenous language, is the number one most spoken indigenous language in Mexico. Two out of the top three languages spoken in Mexico are indigenous languages, both Nahua and Maya. There's Spanish, Nahua, Maya. Two of the top three are indigenous languages. Now, if you have Mexica blood, if you have Aztec blood, or you're from the with Nahua, which is more than just the Mexica. Most people think, oh, you have to be Mexica. No, the Nahua are the modern contemporary descendants of the Mexica. And what a lot of people don't understand, you think Mexica, you think one. It's not just one people. They come from the Nahua. You know, they're. This, I'll put it to you this way: when you think of the Apache, there are
Mm.
different bands of the Apache. There's Repan, there's Chiricahua. There's different bands within the Apache nation, right? You have different bands. It's the same thing with the Mexica, what we call the Aztecs. They were part of the greater Nahua, people. Now, um, they actually had two names, not one, two. And one was a personal name, what we would refer to as a nickname. Now, this was either given to you during ceremony, it was given to you by an elder, or was something that you took on yourself further down the road. So you could actually take down a name today. Something, a physical trait, a personality trait, an animal that, just speaks to you. An eagle, soaring eagle, you look that up, you take that as a name. You see that in Native Americans on this side.
Oh yeah.
Running deer, black bear, you know what I mean?
Mm.
It's the exact same thing there. But now the name that you can reclaim, the name that you can find out, is your calendar name, because that's written. You can actually find out the exact name you would have had colonization not taking place. And the way you do that is simple as this: that calendar name, your Mexica name, your Aztec name, it's three words. Those words are identified by the year you were born, the month you were born, and the day you were born. Each day, each day had a name, each month had a name, and each year had a name. A combination of those three names are your calendar is your calendar name. The name you would have had colonization not happened. Now you have to do your due diligence in reclaiming this name, and the reason is because today's calendar isn't the same as the Aztec calendar. You got to remember we had different amount of days in each month, different amount of months in each year. So it's called the Tompanali, and you can take this calendar and convert it. You can convert, and there's actually a couple of websites that do this for you. You could just type in your birthday this year, and it automatically converts it over to the Aztec calendar. There are a few websites that do it. There was one in particular that I used to
Mm.
use for people, but they no longer do it. But you can look it up. And once you convert your birthday today to the Aztec calendar, you'll see that each year has a name, each month has a name, and each day has a name. Those three words
Man.
combined was your calendar name.
Man, that blown away there. So you're saying there's someone that could be watching this live right now, right? And say they're in Mexico, and say they're they have an indigenous family. There's someone that could be go up to their grandfather who's still, gracias a Dios, maybe breathing and alive. Ask him this, and the grandfather could give him the real handed down through the tribe last name. Um, wow! Imagine getting that piece of information. That's
Yeah.
crazy. Wow, I'm blown away. I wanted to ask you this. I saw you've been talking about on a few shorts, you were talking about prophecies. I heard you talking about eagle prophecy. I heard you talking about different kind of prophecies. Where do you hear this from? Are you studying this, or are you involved in some kind of group, or de dónde oyes estas cosas as far as de profecías?
I have a large following of Native Americans on the reservation. People that still have ties to their pueblos, people that have ties to their reservations.
Mm,
This is a Hopi prophecy, and it's the Eagle and Condor prophecy. It's they actually had. I went to a powwow in San Marcos, and it was called the Sacred Springs Powwow. And in this particular powwow, that's what it was all about. You saw Mexica dancers, Aztec dancers, danza Azteca, with Northern Nation dancers, all dancing under the same tent in the same
mm,
circle. And it's a beautiful thing to see because they understand that. And if you go to, you can look up their website right now, and it's called the Sacred Springs Powwow. If you look up their website, and you'll see on the bottom it says bringing together the eagle and condor, because it's something that they promote, that unity across nations, across borders. And that's why they have the Aztec dancers in their powwow. And what ends up happening is they all come in together during the grand entrance, and then you have the Northern Nations competition dances, and then you have an hour nothing but asset dancers, and then they come back and do more competitions, and it's promoting that eagle and condor prophecy.
And the eagle and condor prophecy, de qué es? O sea, what is it?
When both when northern and southern nations come together and not only become aware of their ties to this land, but start to rise up together to fulfill their purpose in life, their destiny.
Wow. Geez, another one, right? You heard it here first. This is a principal message of Chicano Street, Raza Unity, all the Raza basically waking up. I guess
Absolutely.
I've heard of prophecies in churches and Christian churches for decades now of a great awakening. I mean, a lot of people are waking up to more information that's like we're given on the internet. Do you think that has to do with it también?
Yeah, and that's what I tell people, that this isn't just a fad. This isn't just a phase. This is an awakening. This is and that's what I've made my mission. It's something, and I've said this so many times. Revolution doesn't begin on the battlefield. It begins in the hearts and the minds of the people. We've They colonized not only the lands, but they colonized the hearts and the minds of the people. We got so many of our own people that fight against us, and this is. I always use the analogy of the obedient dog. You can have a group of dogs, right? You have a group of dogs. They're running around, they're doing their thing all together, all living in harmony. Now, I was to take one of those dogs and bring him to my house and put him behind the fence, and I feed him, I treat him good, he's eating good, he's sleeping good, he's sleeping inside, he's warm, he's all comfortable. That dog will be start to bark against his own kind on the other side of the fence. He will defend that home against any invader coming to the house. And that's what
Mm.
happens to our people. They get taken in, and okay, they got a good job, they got a good car, they got a good life going within the system of colonization, so they become happy. Malcolm X said it best. And if you look up the teachings of Malcolm X, when he talks about the house inward and the field inward, he explains it perfectly, because you get these people that start to get comfortable because their proximity to whiteness, they feel as though makes them white and makes them more advantaged. That happened in Mexico too. That happened because the color of their skin. When you look at the casta system, it went by who they were and the color of their skin. Spaniard, criollo, mestizo, mulatto, zambo, slave, indio, and then slave. They were categorized that way. And when you were above the Indio and the slave, simply because of the white blood that was within you. You were mestizo, so you were better than them. So a lot of people, that happens to a lot of people with that mentality. They think, okay, well, as long as I continue to fit in, to get in where I fit in with this crowd over here, I'm okay. Well, that's the same thing, like I say, with a dog. How long are you going to wear that leash? As long as they feed you, as long as they put a little water in your bowl and a little food in your dish, you're going to continue to be okay with that leash. When are you going to break free of that leash? When are you going to rise up? When are you going to start, biting the hand that feeds you? That's what so many people are afraid to do. What am I going to do once I bite the hand that feeds me? I'm going to be left without food. Well, that's
Okay, gotcha.
sad.
Those are the kind of things that mi hermano Waywardson says that lights up the comment section. Let me ask you this: it's 2024, hermano. Do you? I asked this to the Brown Berets a couple weeks ago. Do you? It's 2024. Is there still forms of oppression right now? And if there is, some examples.
Okay, now I'm gonna get into this, and I know a lot of people aren't gonna like this, but forms of oppression. I see that, when I was growing up, right? And probably I forget how old you are. When you're growing up, we were expected to work. You wasn't looking. You were geared towards manual labor. You
Mm,
towards That's why they had these trade schools in school. If you remember, if you're as old as me, if somebody in the comments is as old as me, when you went to school, they had mechanics in there. They had, you can go in there and be a licensed plumber. You can go in there and be a licensed electrician. When you were in school, they had trade schools in school. They took all that away, but the reason that they had these is because they were gearing you towards manual labor.
yeah,
You weren't looked to go above. You wasn't going to be a doctor. You wasn't going to be a lawyer. They
they
weren't
were
trying to push
grooming.
you, and they were. pushing you this way because you were expected to get out there and put in the work. Now, a lot of us, we work when we work hard and we work proudly, but that's the thing. So when you got like, when they pushing things like SB4 here in Texas, that makes the color of my skin probable cause. That's exactly what SB4 does. It says that if you look like me, they can pull you over and ask for your papers. And if you don't have those papers, they can deport you. So SB4, what are they looking for? Blonde hair, blue eyed people? When they're looking for illegal immigrants, like the United States is fixing to start doing with what they're doing, as far as immigration and stuff, are they going to blonde? Because there's blonde hair, blue eyed people in Mexico. Are they picking up blonde hair, blue eyed people and asking them, "Where's your papers? Are you from here? Are you legal?" Or are they going to people that look like you and me or darker complexion? It's always going to be that, and it's always been that. You see that right now. What they're doing is talking about denaturalization, taking the citizenships of those who went through, because see, they call it illegal immigration because they came over here illegally, they crossed the border without going through the process. Now they're saying, even if you did go through that process, we're going for you too, and we're going to denaturalize you and take your citizenship. Now, what most people, when they argue this point or they argue what's going on there, they say this, oh, well, they're just going for those people that lied on their application. No, 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 no. There's also in there, there's regulations that pertain to those, that paperwork that was mishandled by the government, a clerical error. You can actually be deported, not because you lied on the application, because somebody in the office made a mistake on a date. They put your name with a J instead of a G. Any clerical mistake, they can automatically, denaturalize you. What people
Mm.
need to understand, it's not about the legal process, whether you came here legally or legally. It's about who you are and the color of your skin. Because Mexicans became the majority in 2020 without fanfare. In 2020, Mexicans became the majority here in Texas, and we're coming, in California. We're just, there's too many of us. There's too many. There's too many fabulosos in the house of Pine Sol. There's too much fabuloso in the house of Pine Sol.
Okay, I get. And then so there is. I asked the brown berets that same question about what are the forms of oppression if we are under oppression, because there is this also this idealism of, well, if we just dwell on that victim mentality, well, I can't get ahead. A lot of people use that as a reason to not get up and hustle, and I don't even know how they can do that if we have Mexicano blood. And I just came back from Mexico. Everyone over there, they're getting up at 4:35 in the morning. If they don't get on that camión y van a ir a trabajar, there's no frijoles. If there's no frijoles for them, there's no frijoles for their family. So I just don't get that on how people can just throw it away and be like, well, because they hear people saying they're oppressed.
And see, that's the thing. When when you live the life of privilege,
Mm,
and this is speaking to the white people, this is to the white man. When you live the life of privilege, equality looks like oppression. When they start coming to you, when you're here and they're trying to get here to you, that looks like oppression because it looks like you're having to, you're stooping down instead of them coming up. And equality looks like oppression to those that have lived a life of, of privilege. You're looking like you're having to give up something in order for me to have something. I'll put it this way: I've got one steak. You've been eating the better half of that steak, the biggest part of that steak forever. I'm asking for my fair share. So that's you, to you, that looks as though I'm taking away from you. I'm not taking away from you. All I'm asking is for what belongs to me, my fair share of
mm,
it. But because you're so used to having this much and me that much, now that I ask for half, now you're looking at, oh, you're coming from me, you're taking away from mine, you're taking off of my plate. I'm no longer going to be able to eat like I used to eat. Now I've got to share my. No, that wasn't yours to begin with. You've just been so used to having that, that bigger piece, that now that you have to have half. I'm not asking for more than half. I'm not asking for anything on your side of that table. I'm just asking for my fair share. Give me a fair share. It's my turn now. And
mm,
it looks that way to the eyes of those people. And I understand it. If I'll give it to you this way: somebody that's working, somebody that has a business, and you have
mm.
somebody that's working for you, right?
Yeah.
And they're making $10 an hour, and you're making $1,000 off of every job. And now they're, because of uh because of the interest rates and everything else going up, the cost of living going up. Now you have to pay them, instead of $10, you have to pay them $12. Well, now instead of making $1,000, you're making 998, and it just keeps going that way because now you're having to take out of your pocket to give to them so they can get to a certain standard of living. So now you're looking at it like, well, damn, them coming up is bringing me down. You want to be up
Mm.
here and have them here. So it just looks that way to certain people because they're so used to living that life of privilege that when push comes to shove, equality looks like oppression to you.
Hermano, do you think capitalism is evil?
Not inherently. I think that but I also understand that socialism and all of these other things, they're we have yet to create a form of government that can overcome the nature of man. There's not a single form of government that can overcome the nature of man. Single form of religion that can overcome the nature of man. Because the nature of man is to, do what he can do to get ahead, regardless of who he steps on in doing that. And so, and I've said this a lot of times before, you've got people, there's one difference between the oppressor and the oppressed. One difference between the oppressor and the oppressed. One is in the position to oppress, the other strives to be. So when you're, and this has happened in every country that has ever fought for revolution, from Cuba to China to Russia. Anytime people are oppressed and they come and they overturn that oppression, they have become the oppressor every single time. And that's just what it is. It's the nature of man.
Hermano, it's been a great conversation. The hour flies by de volada. You guys, I need you to do me a favor and subscribe over. Follow me, hermano, on TikTok, Waywardson 360, Waywardson 360. And wrapping up, because it is la Semana de Acción de Gracias. Thanksgiving, hermano, your thoughts. Is it a good thing? And go with it. It's a commercial US thing. You don't care, bow your head, give thanks to something, go through the motion. Or is it like a lot of the pages are saying Thankskilling? They can't celebrate that, so we should no hacer nada nuevo on that day. Where do you fall in those three or four things on what's happening Thursday?
Well, Thanksgiving, I know some people celebrate it as a day of giving thanks. A lot of Native Americans celebrate it. It's a day of mourning. We have our own Thanksgiving. It's called Shokot, and that is it's for the harvest. Thanks for the harvest. Thanks for the abundance. We had Thanksgiving ourselves before colonization. We don't need what came after. We have our own traditions of giving things, our own way of giving things. We don't need the white man's way.
What an interesting conversation. I'm still blown away by the great, great, great grandfather. That was deserving of a 1942 shot of Don Julio. Hermano, I appreciate you. I'm going to be, of course, I'm a follower, seeing you on the internet. Do me a favor and subscribe over there at TikTok, Waywardson 360. Last words, hermano.
Well, I just want everybody to, my whole page, what I'm all about is reconnecting to who you were. That's all. I'm not saying ignore what you become or what you're a part of and the traditions that you now follow. All I'm saying is that most of us, those of mixed blood or mixed heritage, you gravitate towards one side of your existence at the expense of the other. I'm saying there's more to you than you've been led to believe. To seek that out, find it, and honor it. That's all.
Man, I appreciate you. Again, the hour flew by. Everlasting Bass said, does Wayward Son have anything to do with the music group Kansas?
Yeah, it's a song. That song speaks to me. That's if you actually listen to the words of that song, that's why I chose that because I'm old school. I was listening to that music before it was called classic rock, when it was just called rock. I'm that old, so
O sea, you were a rebel before being a rebel was cool.
absolutely.
Hermano, buenas noches. I appreciate you one more time. Feliz Dia de Acción de Gracias. Holidays, if I don't see you, I appreciate your time more than you know. You guys follow him on TikTok, Wayward Son 360. It's Tuesday night. We are out. We appreciate you. Hit that like, though, before you go. Hit the like button. Hermano, gracias otra vez más. We are out off of Chicano Street. Remember what I always say? Remember what I always say. In the end, all you got is the memories.
Absolutely.